Welcome to the Madison Miller podcast. We are about to have friend of the show, Geoff Magliocchetti, join us. He writes for SI Now for the Knicks, the Cowboys, and UConn, the Jets for X Factor, and the Liberty for Baseline Sports New York, and then covers high school sports for NJ.com. So he has a lot on his plate. He hasn't been on in a few months, and we have a lot to catch up on, including his new gigs, the captain. We'll talk about episode 2, the Liz Cambridge situation with the Los Angeles Sparks, the controversial Cup Series finish from Pocono, and some trade possibilities with our beloved New York Yankees. So, hope you guys sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, now I'm joined by Geoff Magliocchetti. How are you doing on this fine Wednesday evening?
Hey, it's Miller time. How you doing today?
Good, that's right. It's Miller time, as you always would say. All right, so you are doing a lot right now, and tell us about your new gigs.
Yes, I'm currently overseeing SI.com, SportsIllustrated.com's New York Knicks site, editor over there, and I'm also contributing to several other of their sites, including those of the Dallas Cowboys, the Los Angeles Rams, the Buffalo Bills, as well as several others. And I'm still remaining with my New York Liberty work, though at a new locale over at Baseline Sports NYC, and continuing to work with the New York Jets with Jets X Factor and New Jersey High School Sports for NJ.com.
That's great. And we'll start with the captain. Obviously, episode 2 aired last Thursday. What were your thoughts on that episode?
I tell you what, it was great to see all those callbacks to the '98 team, and I feel that these past few games for the Yankees, for the New York Yankees, have kind of diluted this debate a little bit. But I'm very glad that the '98 team came to prominence, because we really need to stop, and by we, I mean both as Yankee fans and as a baseball community as a whole, we really have to stop comparing this year's team to the '98 group, because the '98 group was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime team, and it was great to see memories of that team brought up in episode 2 of The Captain, and it really showed a lot about Jeter, Derek Jeter, the way he was able to step up and become a leader on that team, to officially leave his mark on one of the most iconic franchises in all sports, on one of his most iconic teams. So that's why it always makes me cringe almost to see people go, oh, why do we need a Derek Jeter documentary? Why do we need that? He was overrated. He was nothing. If he wasn't in the Yankees, he would be. If he wasn't, I forget who said it, but someone said, if Jeter wasn't on the Yankees, he would have been Craig Biggio. But here's the thing. So many have come through New York, and they have wilted under the spotlight. And what Jeter was able to do, the Yankees helped cement his legacy as the captain, because it's no easy task to succeed in New York, especially on a team like that '98 group. And I thought episode 2 was a nice little retrospective too, because he was able to look back in the early stages of his career, and he was able to look back at the celebrity it brought him as well, because Jeter's one of those guys who, we say this a lot about so many of our other prior sports legends here in New York. We say that. I've seen it said about perhaps Joe Namath, perhaps Lawrence Taylor. In those days, it's a good thing that social media did not exist in those days. And Jeter was one of those guys who really kind of almost got away with that. I'm not saying he was doing anything like super wrong or super bad or anything, but at the same time, Jeter was one of the last few guys who was able to get away without being haunted, without his every waking move being haunted by Twitter, not to mention the quote embrace debate style of sports television we have these days. So it was good to see Jeter kind of in that perspective, in dealing with fame. And on the field, he was able to cement his legacy with that '98 group as one of the all-time great leaders, and not just New York sports history, but sports as a whole history.
Absolutely, yeah. I really have enjoyed the captain so far, and then you made an excellent point about the '98 team versus the current team. I am right there with you, and it's not just this year's Yankees; it's a bunch of great teams we've had in the past. I think the best team we've ever seen in Major League history was the '98 Yankees. So that's why I don't like when people compare not just this year's Yankees, but any other great team we've had to that '98 Yankees team because of how special that '98 team was. And I feel the same way about Mariano Rivera. And every time we see a great closer, and people automatically compare him to Mariano Rivera, like we've seen it with like Kenley Jansen, we've seen it with a bunch of like closers, Craig Kimbrell. Like nobody's Mariano Rivera. I feel the same way about Mariano Rivera's career as well.
I mean, look, as Yankee fans, I feel we're almost spoiled with the way that Rivera, that, once you heard Enter Sandman, you knew that game was over. Because we had, over 2 decades of watching Mariano Rivera come from that bullpen. And we look at some of the guys who've passed through New York since then, even during the latter stages of the Rivera era, when they took over for him, if he was, God forbid, injured or something like that. There have been some very solid names to pass through the Yankee Stadium bullpen. Guys to come to mind currently for me are guys like Andrew Miller, Rafael Soriano came in, did really well. Dave Robertson and the two or three different tenures he had with this group could be another coming.
Yep.
If the trade deadline worked itself out. And I think that we're spoiled in that sense. In that if any closer, I saw Clay Holmes, for example, had a brilliant April and May. And then when he lost a couple in June, people were like, oh, this guy's a fraud, get rid of him. We forget, we're so spoiled in the sense the Yankee fans did not have to worry about the end of a game for so many years. And the other 29 fan bases in baseball would cut off their left arm to have that sort of stability, to have that sense of insurance. It reminds me, too, of, I'm sure you know this as a fellow Ranger fan, of the security that Henrik Lundqvist and Igor Shesterkin provided for the past decade plus. So it just feels like, he's held everyone else to an unfair standard through no fault of his own. He was that dominant that he makes his contemporaries and other solid pitchers look pedestrian almost in response, and that says something. And again, the Yankees helped cement that legacy to come in and succeed in the grandest stage, and not just all of baseball, perhaps all of sports, arguably, is something else and really only adds to his legend and legacy.
I agree with you. And I'm excited for Saturday because it's the Old Timers Day game, and Mariano's supposed to pitch in it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. Although I have to say, I'm not looking forward to Old Timers Day in the sense that when I see guys like, I think it was the last Old Timers Day they had Nick Swisher there, and I was like, oh no, Nick Swisher is at Old Timers Day. I'm officially old, and I don't like that. I don't like those reminders.
That's true.
I think that, and seeing Mo there too is kind of like a reality check. It's like, oh no, I'm turning into one of them. No, but at the same time, I think it's a great little tradition that the Yankees continue to do, and I'm really glad to see that they've kept that up, and it's finally making its return to the field. And I'm looking forward to see what they could do there, and I'm eager to see what they could do in a 4-game set against the Royals as well, because what this Yankee team do. I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, they falter against the good teams. They can only beat the bad teams." But I don't have a problem being with the bad teams because this team historically had problems with the putrid version of the Baltimore Orioles, and it wound up costing them a home playoff game last year, because I think they won something along the lines of, I could be wrong. This isn't the exact number by any stretch. They won something along the lines of, I want to say 16-8 against the Orioles last season. Boston was like 22-2, and the Yankees finished tied with the Red Sox for the wild card. So what I always say is, you beat the lowly Orioles one time, and Giancarlo Stanton's single that slammed off the Green Monster. That's in someone's 29-75 milkshake at that point. So I feel that you have to beat the bad teams. And it goes back to what we were talking about with the great teams in MLB history, the greatest teams. The greatest teams know how to do the simplest things, the ordinary things, extraordinarily well. So I'm really eager to see what they could do in a 4-game set against the meandering Royals at this point.
Yeah, I'm interested too. And we'll get to the Yankees trade deadline possibilities in a second. And they might see one in Andrew Benintendi this weekend too.
Yeah, he's going to be interesting to look at. I see people have concerns. Go, can he play in Toronto? Can he play in Toronto? But at the same time, I think the Yankees really need this right now because you look at what some of the outfield endeavors they've had over the past couple games. It's been a little rough out there. I Gleyber Torres running out into left field for during the first inning of that Baltimore game. That was an adventure and a half, and a little more, if anything, of course, needs to be said about Joey Gallo. So I think that he can really benefit the Yankees in some way. And I hear a lot. There's such a debate going on about how the Yankees haven't. How the Yankees are always piling up their prospects, and then you have the other camp that's like, no, don't trade all your prospects for a championship. The Yankees, we forget, are in a drought. It shows how spoiled again we are as Yankee fans,
right?
In the sense that it's for us it's been an eternity. And you look at another team like you don't think a team like I don't know Cleveland doesn't look at the Yankees 13-year drought at this point and go, oh my God, we would kill for that. So I think that the time has finally come for the Yankees to start dealing some of these prospects away. They built this foundation by keeping their prospects, but at the same time, what has it really yielded at this point? So I feel like a championship move must be made, and whether that's Andrew Benintendi, whether that's Luis Castillo, who has also garnered some consideration, whether that's David Robertson, as we were discussing before, they need to get something done because it's good to see that they've built themselves such a solid cushion, such a healthy cushion in the division right now, currently 11 and a half games up on the Toronto Blue Jays. But at the same time, let's secure home field advantage throughout the playoffs because if you have to go to Houston for games 1, 2, 5, and 7 of the ALCS, provided you even make it that far, of course, the AL is packed with a lot of good contenders. It's not going to end pretty. So I really think that the time has come for them to finally start making moves again.
I think they will make a move. I'm with you. And I think the Yankees know what you're hearing leaks left and right about who they're interested in and whatnot. And their farm system right now is the best it was since like Clint Frazier and Gleyber and Aaron Judge even were in their farm system. So I think this is the time to do it. And I don't know who it's going to be. If I had a gun to my head, I would probably say Luis Castillo would be the move. But I could be wrong. Could absolutely be wrong.
I think you're right. I think that's the way to go because we've seen like the just torrid pitching at the start of this year has kind of cooled off a little bit, and that's fine. I'm not even concerned about that because they got off to an otherworldly start in their pitching, and it was fine. Did I expect, as amazing as Nestor Cortez was for the first couple months of the season, did I expect him to be carrying a 1.80 ERA into September? Probably not. So I think they should do something about that. They should up the bullpen at this point in time too, because losing Michael King was just such a blow, such a tough blow for this team. He had been one of the most reliable, most consistent contributors in that bullpen all year, who I have to give a ton of credit for in last night's game. Jordan Montgomery obviously didn't have the necessary firepower to deal against the Mets yesterday, giving up 5 and 2 1/3 innings yesterday, and they gave up a run in the not in the bottom of the 8th, and that was Albert Abreu on the mound. I couldn't even be mad at the bullpen because they pitched just over or exactly 5 innings of shutout balls. So I feel that that was a good showcase for them, and I feel that they really need to start bolstering that again. They have to re-get that going with someone else, bring someone else in, and really improve that pitching to make sure that there's a consistent flow of pitchers out there moving forward. I will say one thing I'm pleased about this team, one thing that I think they have trended in the right direction. I know they're doing the whole thing, hitting a lot of home runs again, living up to that Bronx Bombers name, but at the same time, I'm noticing some more small ball antics from them.
Oh, yeah.
It's been the fundamentals, Madison, that I think that have really killed the Yankees over the past few years. And I think that because we see it, the most egregious error has obviously been the base running. The base running has been an absolute nightmare. It's ever stemmed from, I think it was Greg Bird going to third during the 2017 ALCS. So I think that they're getting better with the small ball and the fundamentals, and are thus able to build such a cushion in the AL East right now, to build such a big game. Because That was my big lead, because that's what my biggest fear was, as a Yankee fan anyway, when MLB announced that there was going to be expanded playoffs, because the Yankees have been way too content over previous deadlines to stand pat and not really do much. I know last year was an exception. They brought in Joey Gallo last year, and we're seeing how that's turning out. Unfortunately, Anthony Rizzo, on the other hand, has been very well. He's been a godsend over at first base, so have to credit them for that move. But over the prior few deadlines, the Yankees have been too content to stand pat. The Yankees seem to be content with a wild card berth, playing meaningful games in September and October. This time around, they need to prove that they're for real, and that they need to prove that they see the issues on their roster, and they need to prove that they are both capable and want to plug up the holes in the name of a World Series championship.
That's right, and I really think that the moves are going to be made. Like I said, it's going to be Castillo,
Agreed.
Potentially. I mean, that would be my best bet. Did you hear Chris Russo, Mad Dog, say on High Heat that he thinks it's a borderline lock that they get Castillo?
Yes, I did. I heard something about that. I didn't see the clip itself, but frankly, that got me the most scared, because growing up in this area for years and years and years, there was no greater Yankee hater in New York than Mad Dog. I love the guy to death. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I used to read his book almost every day growing up. End up meeting him when I was good God, I was 9 years old. I went to a Nets Wizards game. It was Michael Jordan's first game in Washington when they played the Nets for the first time. His first matchup against the Nets as a Wizard, and the Nets were on their way to the finals at the time. And I met both Mike and the Mad Dog there. First thing I told the Mad Dog was, I read your book. But there was no greater Yankee hater in this area than Mad Dog Russo, who was not a Met fan for the record, or a Red Sox fan. He was a he is a San Francisco Giants fan, of course. Famous one time. So seeing Mad Dog Russo say it just gets me nervous at this point, unfortunately, as a native New Jerseyan.
Me too, and I said that on my podcast earlier when I was doing the trade deadline segment. I legit said the only thing that makes me nervous is that Mad Dog's trying to jinx it.
It seems like the exact kind of thing he would do on the show. Like, hey, Mikey, it's a lock, Mikey. It's a lock, Mikey. Like, don't get me wrong. I respect what Mad Dog does to the nth degree, and I'm not gonna disparage him. I'm not gonna doubt his sources by any stretch. But I just from a Yankee fan perspective, seeing Mad Dog call lock, that's what has me most nervous.
Me too. It's the Yankee fan in me, not the observer in me. It's the Yankee fan in me that makes me nervous about Mad Dog.
Well said.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that real quick. Okay, let's switch topics to the WNBA. The biggest story is the Liz Cambage story. Gets a release from the LA Sparks. What do you think is next for her?
Honestly, I think what's best for her personally. Look, I obviously don't want to serve as psychiatrist here. I don't want to be a therapist by any stretch of the imagination. But personally, what I think is best for her is that she takes some time away from the game at this point. And first thing I said when I heard the release news, before you ask New York Liberty fans, no. You don't need Liz Cambage. No, absolutely not. This team has a solid core as is. One whose firepower they're almost struggling to almost harness and get all in at the same time. Of course, there's been so many injuries with that Liberty group, but Liz Cambage is the last thing that the Liberty needs at this point. And there's been a lot of petty struggles from Cambage at this point. I'm not sure if for anyone who hasn't read the Chris Haynes report over at Yahoo Sports, he reported that a good part of it stemmed from the fact she was upset about not getting touches even though she wasn't open, and it got to the point where her Los Angeles teammates were kind of forcing the ball into her and trying to even when she was covered, and it led to turnovers. There was also some strife with Derek Fisher, the former Knicks coach who was there. He got fired this year, replaced by interim head coach Fred Williams. There, of course, was the issue over at the Olympics this year. I forget who it was. I think it might have been someone from News Corporation. The name escapes me at this time. but there was the controversy that she had with the racist incident she had with the Nigerian team in preparation for the Australian League, and of course she later left that Olympic effort, citing her mental health at the time, and excuse me. And finally this year, it was even weirder story, because in the Haynes report she mentioned she really wanted number one from Amanda Zoe, formerly of the Liberty, of course, and it got to the point where Zoe B's international commitments got her contract suspended. But she found out that her number was being given away on social media prior to the suspension of that contract. So, and Cambage made no secret. She wanted to play in LA for years, because Cambage is a heck of a player, and she's also an entertainer as well. Over the offseason, she is heavily involved in both modeling and DJing. So I personally think the next move for Cambage, she should take some time for herself for a little bit. I feel like she's almost too proud in the sense to outright retire and end her career on this note a little bit. Saying for years and years and years that you want to play in LA, you want to play in the City of Angels, the entertainment capital of the world. For it to end after 25 games like this, I think Cambage is almost too proud in a sense to kind of end it this way. Same reason I never bought Tom Brady's retirement. Brady is far too Brady was far too proud for his career to end in the divisional playoff round. That's not the Tom Brady we knew. And this is not the Liz Cambage that we know. I feel like she's too proud for her career to end like this. She still has the talent. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. It's all about the attitude at this point. And I think some time away for the game is best for her at this point in time. Again, it's entirely her decision. It's a free country, but at the same time, I feel personally, in my opinion, some time away from the game would do her some good.
I agree with you. I think time away would do her good, and I think that she should eventually come back and play basketball and not retire, because she's a great player. She's a very great player, and probably one of the best 20 players in the league, you would say.
Yeah. On a good day, she's top 10 or 5. And it's just unfortunate what has become of her career at this point. One defined by controversy, one where she wanted to go form a relative super team over in Las Vegas with Asia Wilson, with Kelsey Plum, with Dearica Hamby over there, and that didn't work out. So she went over to LA, the place she wanted to play for a while. Again, it ends after 25 games. And, it's part of a trend that's probably a different conversation entirely. This is another high-profile, quote-unquote, contract divorce that we've seen. We've seen a few others where basically, big-name talent simply didn't work out in the locale where they wanted to be. We saw it also with Tina Charles in Phoenix, for example. Liberty's all-time leading scorer went from the Liberty to Washington, Phoenix this time around. That didn't work out with the Mercury, so now she's with the Seattle Storm. De facto rank chasing. Who can blame her at this point? She basically won everything there is to win at the WNBA level, with the exception of that trophy, of course. So that finals trophy, that is. And I feel that, again, Cambage is too proud to truly walk away from this on this note, because we've seen just her. She's capable of so much, and it just stinks in the sense that she has not been able to form a permanent WNBA home. I mean, she wanted her way out of Tulsa, and frankly, it was easy to see the writing of the wall there. The Tulsa Shock were done for as is. So she forced her way out of there, made her way over to Dallas. Had a very solid career over there. Was MVP material over there. She was getting that team, a team mired in its own controversy. Another Fred Williams situation. He was fired. I believe it was. I forget who replaced her, but she got them in the playoffs here. That was a one year where she torched the Liberty for WNBA record 53. That was on a camp day, if I recall. So crazy how I know this. I know I'm in desperate need of a social life, but at the same time, it just stinks that she has not been able to form a WNBA locale, a WNBA home to call her own, and it's unfortunate because a good part of this is self-inflicted.
Right. Yeah, so let's talk about the WNBA as a whole. So the unofficial second half's underway after the Commissioner's Cup championship game. What are your big storylines down the stretch for the rest of the regular season?
Well, I'm really interested to see who's going to finish at the top of this whole thing. You just mentioned that we had a very exciting Commissioner's Cup final last night between Chicago and Las Vegas, defending champion Sky taking on the Aces out there. I'm interested to see how much further Kelsey Plum can take this really good season she's been having. A lot has been made about the tiny trophy she's been receiving. Winning the All-Star Game MVP, winning the Commissioner's Cup MVP. At this point, Kathy Engelbert, she has no choice but to make sure the next trophy, which would probably be the Finals MVP, that one better be the size of one of those giant teddy bears from Costco at this point. So I want to see who finishes at the top of this league. The 1-2, they're currently separated by a game out there. Vegas winning last night. That game not counting towards the standings, but you look behind them. I think the big headline from the get-go. I was saying it from the start of the season. I said it last year too. This WNBA, or this version of it, is very, very top-heavy in the sense that those residing in the penthouse are very good and look like absolute world beaters at times. Like Chicago was doing real well even without Courtney Vandersloot, who was not on hand for Saturday's game at the Liberty. I was out there in Brooklyn the other night. Ionescu game winner ended a eight game winning streak for the Sky and a 5-game losing streak for the Liberty. And Chicago is still a very, very tough team. And I think someone who has really risen to the occasion is Rebecca Gardner, who did a real solid job on defense on Ionescu the other night until the very end. And I feel that she could contend not only for the Rookie of the Year, but she can also contend for the All-Defensive Team as well. And of course, Chicago is blessed with the talents of Azrae Stevens, Kalia Copper, and of course Candace Parker, and of course Vandersloot and Allie Quigley from outside. So, and can't forget Emma Meesman as well, she of the 2019 Finals MVP. So Chicago is going to be a threat once again. And then the other two you got to keep an eye on at the top is Connecticut and Seattle. They're currently occupying the 3 and 4 slots respectively. Only 2 and 3 games out respectively. Seattle, of course, going on, quote unquote, one last ride with Sue Bird in tow. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on. If you can, definitely try to see a Seattle Storm game before all is said and done, because you're not going to want to miss Sue Bird's final hours at the WNBA level. And then, of course, on a local level, we got to talk about the Liberty, who are currently a game and a half out of the WNBA's final playoff spot. Game and a half out, but also 2 games out of the 6th seed right now. And the Liberty are a team that, again, they've had major trouble kind of getting 12 women, the ideal dozen women they want in the lineup from time to time, because there's been so many injuries. But Magliocchetti hasn't slipped the court since June. The original plan from head coach Sandy Brondell, she was under the belief that Laney could play by the end of this month. Who knows if that's going to be feasible. Liberty have 2 more games this month, Friday and Sunday coming up at this point. Those games coming against the Sunday game coming against Phoenix, and Friday's game being a rematch. This one in Chicago. So if the Liberty can get to this point, the 6th seed is very much on the table for the Libs, who right now are 2 games removed from that spot. So definitely keep an eye on the battle for those latter spots. The top 5 are relatively secure. Chicago and Vegas have already clinched. Connecticut, Seattle, and Washington, who is 17 and 11 in number 5, they're more likely in. But the 5-way battle for 3 spots between Los Angeles, Dallas, Atlanta, Phoenix, and New York and Minnesota, that will certainly be something to keep an eye on. So keep an eye at the top heavy, but there's a lot of future potential beneath them, particularly the Atlanta Dream, who should be very interesting, especially under the supervision of first-year head coach and another former Liberty star, Tanisha Wright.
Right. Alrighty. Let's move on now.
I see what you did there.
Yes. All right. NASCAR. Controversial finish on Sunday in the Cup Series.
Yes.
Disqualifications for Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch, and yours truly picked Denny Hamlin to win the race. So a little bit of a bad beat for me. So what are your thoughts on the disqualifications of Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch from that race?
I think it's interesting to see NASCAR truly punish these guys, because they're not the only ones who were punished from that race. There's currently another controversy, this one going on in the number 34 stall over Front Row Motorsports of Michael McDowell, who's having, even though he won the Daytona 500 last year, he's having by bar the best series of his best season of his career, and it's unfortunate to see they were docked 100 points, dropping into 26th in the standings at this point. So the Gibbs boys not the only ones who were penalized on Sunday, and a lot has been made about what NASCAR is doing at this point in time. It's going to show that they're taking violations under the next gen car very seriously. And I do want to applaud them almost for putting their foot down. We've seen NASCAR do this in the past. I know this was the first quote unquote disqualified win since 1960, they've said, but I'm drawn back to a few years back. I believe it was 2017 when Joey Logano won, and he was allowed to keep the win, but it was defined as encumbered, and he was allowed to keep the win, but did not partake in the playoffs that year. He finished outside the playoff bracket and did not earn another win to get back in. So I think it's interesting to see the NASCAR's outright taking the win away at this point. And it's good to see that. It's fortunate for Hamlin anyway that he has those 2 wins to fall back on, especially because he's been having a brutal season otherwise. So I'm interested. NASCAR said from the get-go that they were going to come down hard on anyone who violates rules, and we've seen that at several points this season. There were several precursors. Brad Keselowski, the number 16, he's currently the co-owner over Roush Fenway now, or I guess it's Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing at this point. He was docked 150 points for another post-race violation earlier this year. And we have seen that they are taking this seriously in the sense that we've seen a lot of loose tires fall off the next-gen car. And anyone who loses a tire on the track, that crew chief gets suspended for 4 races. So I think it's interesting to see NASCAR enforce these rules and truly keep these teams on their toes. And I think it's interesting too that Joe Gibbs Racing opted not to appeal or contest the penalty, unlike what Front Row is doing at this point in time. So I think that it's interesting to see NASCAR. It's I don't want to say brave of NASCAR, but it's a strong move on NASCAR's part to truly enforce these rules and let these guys know that this sort of thing, no matter how small the infraction, is going to be tolerated on the next gen car, or I guess this gen car, if you want to be literal.
Alrighty, yeah, I was surprised to see NASCAR suspend them as well, although it's really ballsy by them as well, and they're, like you said, they're very starting to get committed to that as well. How do you see the rest of this season and even the truck and Xfinity playing out?
I think in all 3 levels we are in for a heck of a playoffs on each side. The Truck Series regular season wrapped up this week. That should be really fun. But I said it from the get-go in the Xfinity Series. Don't let its quote-unquote minor league status fool you. There are going to be some very talented drivers who miss out on the playoffs, because right now at this point in time, Sheldon Creed, defending Truck Series champion, who is currently on the outside looking in by 47 points with only a handful of races to go. So I think you're going to see some really talented drivers on the Xfinity Series level. Prospect guys like Anthony Alfredo, guys like Myatt Snyder, they are going to miss out on the playoffs unless they can earn a win. So that's really something to keep an eye on as we approach the final stages of the season. As for the Cup, I'm really interested to see what happens with the standings as well. We are closing in on a situation, for those not familiar with the NASCAR playoff picture, we're closing in on a situation where we can have more than 16 winners. There are 5 races to go in the regular season. And, we've said it's become, a staple at this point. Oh, you win, you're in. We are getting to a point where it's not that. And we're also getting to a point which is very concerning for the old folks like me. Kevin Harvick is in danger of missing the playoffs right now. And I think another thing we have to keep an eye on the Cup level, one word: revenge. Because we saw it play out at Pocono on Sunday. Denny Hamlin, one of the headlines before everything went to straight up heck for Joe Gibbs Racing. One thing we said, he finally got his revenge on Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain has had a fantastic year in that one car for Trackhouse Racing, been a very good year overall for that group. He got together with Hamlin several points this season, and Hamlin, who basically took his revenge as cleanly as possible. Basically did not give Chastain enough of the racetrack going into turn one in one of the final laps of Sunday's race. He got his revenge in the cleanest way possible. However, where there's revenge, there are often innocent bystanders, and Harvick was the bystander at the time. And Hamlin's post-race reaction to the incident was anything but apologetic. He literally said, "What else did you want me to do? What was I supposed to do?" So I feel that that's not over by any stretch of the imagination, and that's only going to be exacerbated by the idea that he was able to take his revenge on Chastain, but he still finished behind him because of his penalty, and that's only going to tick him off even more. But remember, I think it was Confucius who said that if you're going for revenge, dig two graves, because he now has to worry about Kevin Harvick, who had a fantastic opportunity to gain ground in the standings and perhaps even win. At the time of the wreck, at the time of the Hamlin-Chastain brouhaha, Harvick was running fourth at the time, definitely in the top five, but he was collected in Chastain's spin and forced to serve as the final car in the lead lap, finishing around 28th, 29th, 27th in that range when you account for Busch and Hamlin's disqualifications. So if Harvick misses the playoffs, he's not going to be happy. And these guys, they've hinted so many times, they're patient. They're patient with their revenge. They're going to take their time and wait until that revenge can truly be deadly. Take a sledgehammer to their playoff chances, to their championship hopes. They can be patient. So I think revenge could really define these playoffs. Either way, it's going to be interesting on each and every single level, I feel.
Oh, I agree with you, especially with the Harvick situation that we were just alluding to. One last thing before we go. I had a guest on a few weeks ago that predicted that the Giants were going to win 8 games this year. I think he was a little bit crazy for predicting that, but you never know what happens and whatnot. Who do you think has a better shot to surprise us this year, the Giants or the Jets?
Honestly, it's a tough question for sure. 8 is a little much, but
I agree.
I think there's a reasonable goal for each team this time around. If you can be that team when we get to January or the early stages of February, or no, it's got to be January, because you beat somebody, you beat someone good, you take someone down, and everyone goes, "Oh, watch out for the Giants or Jets next season." A good goal for each side is one of my favorite Christmas traditions. It's a Christmas tradition to me, probably no one else. Again, that's for me in the social life. One of my favorite Christmas traditions is those playoff graphics that come up during December games. The ones that say division winner, current wild card, division leaders, current wild cards, and in the hunt. If we get to December and both the Giants and Jets appear in their respective in the hunt columns, I think you could consider that a win. To answer your question, who is better equipped for a year like this? Honestly, I think it's the Jets, and I only say that because they have a year to work with. Under Robert Saleh, and they have a better sort of core to go with moving forward. A core that has kind of worked together a little bit and really got things rolling in the right direction. And as a matter of fact, I feel that the NFC East is just more of a dangerous division than the AFC East at this point. Buffalo, again, it's like the WNBA. It's very top-heavy. Buffalo, Super Bowl contender. Can't say enough about them. But the rest of it, there's a lot of question marks in there. One goal for the Jets should be this year, by the way, you have to win a division game. You cannot go 0-6 in the division this year. That's absolutely unacceptable and something the Jets have done over the past 2 years. They really have to get the New England monkey off their back, too, especially with New England kind of lingering in mediocrity, lingering in questions about Mac Jones at this point, who was basically labeled the best quarterback in last year's rookie class, almost by default, because he was able to get the team to the playoffs. And we saw how that turned out, again, against the Bills. So you look at the NFC East, any one of those teams, the NFC East is almost always wide open. It's like death taxes, a different winner in the NFC East this year. Paper says, all logic says that the Dallas Cowboys should repeat, but I've seen enough Cowboy games over the year to know that any year where the Cowboys should win the division by 3 or 4 games, they end up losing it by 1 or 2. So and you look at Philadelphia, they're in an interesting spot at this point in time. Really took advantage of that last wild card spot, got themselves in the playoffs last year. The Washington, whatever you want to call them, the Commanders at this point. Washington should be interesting too, so you got to keep an eye on them. They had a strong season, even with major questions at the quarterback spot, questions that I don't think Carson Wentz is fully prepared to answer at this point. So I feel that, but at the same time, they have enough talent that could allow them to contend in that division. Either way, I think the Jets have just another year with their core a little bit. They're locked into Zach Wilson as a starter at this point, and he enters on a good wave of momentum. He will enter the season with 162 consecutive passes without a turnover. Hopefully, in the Jets' case, it's counting. And the Giants, of course, you have the big decisions to make with Daniel Jones, a very make-or-break year for him. And I believe in Brian Daboll. I think the Giants had a really good offseason this year. I can't say enough. There's legitimate hope for the Giants for the first time in a while. But if you could get to the point where, again, you're in the hunt column, and you secure a big win before the end of the year. The Jets, I use this example, the Jets had a big opportunity to do so last year. It's better known as the Antonio Brown game at this point, the game where he left the field. I think it was the day after New Year's, and they brought the Buccaneers to the brink, but then Tom Brady did Tom Brady things with 19 seconds left and ended up winning the game for him. If you could get to that point where, again, in the hunt column, and you take down a contender, in the Jets' case last year was Tampa Bay. If the Giants could do something like take down Philadelphia or Dallas at that point, that'd be really good for them. I'm not sure how late they play in the season, but that'd be really good for them. If you can do that, it's a good season. Who's better equipped to have such a run? Right now, I think it's the Jets.
I agree with you. I think the Jets are better equipped. I think Wilson, year 2 breakout, potentially coming. I think both teams had excellent drafts, but I think the Giants took the best 2 players, arguably, in the entire draft, so I gotta say they had the better draft, but I think the Jets are better equipped to have that type of season where we see them in the hunt come December or even early January. So, Geoff, it was a pleasure to have you on today. Hopefully, you will be back on before the football season.
Madison, I'm looking forward to it. You do a great job on this program. Keep up the great work. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Have a good one.